Hi, my name is Madeline Bach. I'm an electrical engineering major, and for my interview, I interviewed Scott Carpenter, and he works at the National Weather Service headquarters in Salt Lake City, Utah. He's worked in Montana, Wyoming, California, and now Utah, so he's been doing it for many years. So here's the interview.
um, Go out and do wildland fire forecasting in the fire seasons, and usually get to do that 1 to 3 times a summer or a year. So I get to do both a little bit of that hands-on weather forecasting still, but a lot of what we do is more of program management and working with all of our offices. And then a final component of what I do, and a really big part of it has become in recent years, is we work really closely from the operations center with FEMA and with EPA and a lot of other federal agencies, and we're trying to introduce more support from the Weather Service to these other parts of the government. Yeah, I'd say absolutely. The general sense of climate change and the changes in the recent decades have definitely impacted like drought. Some of the things that we don't necessarily think of as more shorter term climate, like the shorter term droughts, like in the course of 5 years or so. But especially working out here in the West, and in my job, we do a lot of support for the state of California, because California is so big that it has 10 different forecast offices that cover it. And so my office has taken on the role of providing support to that state government, and basically taking all those messages from 10 different offices and making it into one message that we can more concisely tell them. And so we've dealt a lot with the periods of drought. Since just in the 7 years I've been in my current job, we've gone through one, I think it was a 5-year drought in California, and then we came out of it, and now we're kind of in another multi-year building drought across the state. And that tends to lead to a lot more fires, like it has in the last few years, and a lot of bigger and more severe fires. So that definitely impacts our job. One of the things we see a lot in places like California with so many people that live there is that us as humans are infringing more on the edges of, what we call the wildland interface. Building into the mountains and building more homes, and communities are expanding into the mountains where we tend to see these larger fires. And we're combining that with the really dry fuels from the periods of drought where the trees are stressed. And then even the grasses dry out, of course, in the heat and dry periods of the summer. And so we'll get more of these fires, and then they're impinging more on us as our, as citizens. And obviously the impacts get a lot bigger. And that's a big part of our job where it gets impacted is, okay, we have drought because of some of the climatic conditions. And then we have more damage from the fire. We have more severe fires because of the drought, and then we have more damage because we've built into the wildland interface so much. And then we're doing a ton of support after the fires. Right now, the staff that work for me are doing a ton of work. It's finally starting to ease in Oregon and a little bit in California, but every time all those communities get burned, there's all the government agencies have to go in there and remove the debris and the household hazardous waste and all those things. And that all can be impacted by weather, because if a big rainstorm comes in and starts washing those chemicals out down into watersheds, that causes a lot of problems. And so they need to have good longer term forecasts and things to know when is the rain coming, so we can get as much work done as we can before. So it impacts in so many ways. And we work with a team of individuals who have all their different roles in the firefight. And we basically provide the forecast for firefighter and public safety around the fire when it's actually burning. So there's that aspect. And then the other aspect that we do is when we deploy quite often to the state of California to their operations center. So it'd be like the state's emergency operations center. And so we're often working with a lot of in both cases, we're working with a lot of the forestry officials in the environment, like the EPA and the state EPA agencies. We're working with a lot of those folks who their work is actually observing those impacts. A lot of times they know the impacts, and so they're looking to us to find out, you know, are we going to see more? Is this going to continue? Is it not going to continue? And another area where we see a lot of that I've been lucky to get involved with a little bit is with the tribal interactions. This whole aspect of traditional ecological knowledge that the Native Americans have. And there's a whole study of it in a lot of different agencies in the Forest Service, the Park Service, a lot of different groups that have a focus on this now. And we've been able to get involved in that a little bit to work alongside the tribes about when you talk about things changing and climate change. It's been really fascinating. When it comes to leadership, it comes to, I think we're learning in the modern science world that we need to be more open to things that are always, that come about from the traditional knowledge. And I think that traditional knowledge goes beyond just the tribal people, of course, because like when we lived in Montana, we used to talk to ranchers all the time. Some of the ranchers in southeast Montana and stuff were so knowledgeable about the forecast, just from the things they've learned from generations of living out there, and you know, before they got weather forecasts or had computers to help. So in my time before I came in the government, I did some Department of Defense contract work, and I worked at a university doing research with some long-term climate modelers. And it was interesting because they were very open about how there's, you know, they were modeling out, you know, hundreds of years. And so there's a lot of error in those models, and they knew that, but they could pick out pieces of it and learn from it to help make the model better, to help in the future. And so I think the thing that I would say to somebody going into it is really be open to true science. We always have our opinions and things, but I would, you know, separate yourself as much as you can from the political nature of it all. and sometimes we kind of have to play the game. Like even the modelers I worked with, in order to get the funding, they kind of had to say, well, our results are showing this, it's really bad. But then, you know, deep down, they knew that their model wasn't all that good yet. So, but they wanted to kind of make sure that they could keep getting grant funding and things to do the research. So they kind of had to play the game a little bit, but I think the big thing is, yeah, stay as far from the politics of it as can be, in the sense that as you're doing the research. And then the difficult thing, the real leadership part, comes with how do you engage with the people who want to be political about it. And that's the thing that I think everybody really struggles with now.
In the past, I never really looked at climate change as something I could really make a difference in. My family and I have always recycled and tried to be energy efficient, volunteered, and I've even gone to different countries and learned their conservation techniques and how they're protecting their environment, but I never really thought it made a large impact on the world. But through this class, I learned that no matter how big or small the gesture is, everything counts. Watching all these really inspirational speakers and how much they poured their heart and souls into their work, just fighting for the environment, is really inspirational and has really showed me that the small things I do make a difference. I think it's really important now that we do change small aspects of our life, and hopefully that will persuade somebody else we know or even don't know that's just seeing it happen to change that part of their life. And after all those small gestures happen, hopefully we can start to clean up our environment and hopefully slow the spread of climate change. So this class has really inspired me, and I'm gonna continue to get my electrical engineering degree, and it has showed me just how important it will be that I go into renewable energy and can create clean energy for us to use instead of continuing to pollute the earth with fossil fuels that we're using more today. So I think it's really important that we all pitch in small ways or big ways if we can to create a cleaner future for everybody.